This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill.
I'm so much more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. Today, I really do have a very special guest. He is located in one of my areas of special interest down in the Tampa, Florida area. I am going to let him introduce himself, and then we're going to talk about some projects that we have going down in Florida. Take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. My name is Alex Corpolongo. I am actually a New York native, like Bill. A couple of years ago, moved down to Tampa, Florida. I came up in the world of construction management. My training is in civil engineering at Stony Brook University in Long Island, and I moved right into being a project manager in New York City on a couple of high-profile condo projects, healthcare projects, a couple different things. Caught the multifamily real estate bug while I was up there, and immediately knew that I didn't want to be buying multifamily real estate in New York City or where I grew up in Westchester County. So I started trying to locate the right market for me to get started and for me to stay. Really, I didn't want to be bouncing around. I wanted to go find the place I wanted to be for a long time. I visited a couple different cities, Raleigh, North Carolina, Phoenix, Arizona. Ended up in Tampa on a long weekend. I've got an aunt and uncle who live down here. Spent a weekend down here a couple years ago and saw some of the huge projects that were starting. There's actually, I think you hear that old tenet, cranes in the air, beware. Saw a lot of cranes in the air in the downtown Tampa skyline. No buildings yet. So I knew that there was a lot coming. And what did it strike me as? It struck me as a baby New York City, and figured it was going to be a really good place to be for a long time. Spent some time across the bridge in Pinellas County, which is where you and I own property, Bill, in downtown St. Petersburg as well. Same thing was going on there. And immediately I knew. That was it. That was the trip right there. I went back up to New York City, told my company at the time that I was packing my bags and moving down, and that's what I did. COVID hit basically as soon as I got down. That was fun. I basically came down guns blazing, ready to go. And then me not really having any systems built out, not really having my relationships where they needed to be. Deal flow stopped, and that meant deal flow stopped for me. I think fortunately where I'm at right now is I kind of have my own deal flow paths working, but at that time I did not. So what did I do? I got my general contractor's license at that time. Figured there was no better time to do that, which was a painful process. That's not fun. Anybody who's gotten that, the study material is extensive, but that provided me the avenue to buy some of these projects that I bought in the past 18 months, right? A lot of these they're all value add properties, construction components, most not like in-depth infrastructure type deals, more lipstick on the pig type stuff, just kind of throwing a coat of paint on the old building in the good neighborhood. But that's what facilitated me doing that and put me right where I needed to be. And now I'm down here in Tampa doing it with you, Bill.
That's it. And I learn a little bit more about you every time we talk. I know we've talked a lot about the two properties, and that's usually our topic of discussion. But you gave me that bio, which I found a few other things that I've learned about you. And now hearing that you got your general contractor's license when COVID hit. And I know that you were a project manager for a big company. Did you have to get that general contractor license to work for them, or were you just prepping yourself during COVID when you were really going to get started with the purchasing of these properties?
Yeah, just prepping myself. I really came down to Florida maybe 3, 4 months. And I was stuck in Orlando at the time. So I knew I always wanted to buy in Tampa, but I was making these, hour and a half, 2 hour trips down to Tampa every weekend, drive as many deals as I could, make offers on a couple. But when that deal flow dried up, I mean, there was a couple weeks there where I was still just trying to source stuff. I'm, checking every relationship that I had with brokers, and it was just dry. It was just dry. So I immediately just started prepping for, what could I do right now? Obviously, plan A, it was on halt for me. I wasn't really figuring out a way to make that happen. So I said, okay, what else could benefit me right now? What certifications could I get? And what became super obvious to me was that I could get the general contractor's license, because obviously that would, pay dividends in what was my career at the time too, as a project manager. My last one was building a Marriott hotel in downtown Tampa. So that helped me there at the time too. But obviously the idea was to facilitate this jump into doing multifamily real estate full time, and that was at a time when I didn't own any multifamily real estate. But I knew I could do it. Just it became came down to just meeting the right people and adding the right tools to my toolkit to make it happen. And fortunately, you were one of those people that I met. We met. I didn't own any multifamily real estate at the time. I think we hit it off. We clicked immediately down there in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we stayed in touch. And it just became kind of the perfect relationship for us to do this together.
No, I agree. It was probably between a year and a half, 2 years ago since we met. And I think the reason that we did have that collision was we both had that interest in that Tampa area. And yes, I agree. Geez, I'm as fortunate or more fortunate rather to have hooked up with you rather than vice versa. I am very sincere when I say that. But getting into that first deal took us a little bit. We had been talking, and you were working it at that point. COVID was it wasn't over, but Florida was open for business. I think it's fair to say, and you had been making your broker contacts, and you were driving for dollars. Actually, I'll let you elaborate a little bit more on how you found these deals or how you find any deals. But I believe we got excited about something that it was well over 100 units that we didn't land that deal. Talk about that very, very, very briefly, because that one never got under contract, but we got a little excited about that one.
Sure. Yeah, that was the one that got away actually, and honestly, I'm that those properties are still in my database. There, that's an owner. He hasn't done too much with those properties, so never say die with those. But there was actually, so yeah, there was that one that you and I talked about, and there was actually the one that was more important for you and I was a deal. If you remember it was called Sawgrass, and it was in the same neighborhood as the one that we eventually bought. And we missed out on that deal about six months prior to the point where ours came together. So that was beautiful. And this is, a super actionable plan for any of your listeners, right? Is made a bid on that deal. It was a good deal. This is in a blossoming area. It's not an A area, but it's just an area where there was a decent amount of transaction volume, a lot of commercial retail type stuff going on there, and very accessible to downtown St. Petersburg, which is one has been for the last 24, 36 months, one of the best real estate markets in the country. So, yeah, bid on that deal pretty hard. I think we got into best and final, lost out, right? Couple months later, this other one hits 2 properties down the road, and it was with a broker who had his finger a little bit less on the pulse than the previous one did. And I remember, because these deals go by, right? Same with that 100 plus unit one that we looked at. Even though you don't get them, I mean, you have to keep tabs on these things. If this is your market, if you've got boots on the ground here, use that as your advantage, right? So I knew where that property was renting at that point. That owner did the right, did a beautiful thing in that area. He brought rents up to where they should be. And then the broker on the one that we eventually bought, I saw in his package, was underselling the property. Right, I saw immediately. I think that he had in there that the 2-bedroom rents would get to 1,200 at the time. Long-term owner, right? Owned it 20 years. Wasn't pushing it. They were managing it in house. It was his wife that was actually managing the property. She didn't speak English well. It's kind of the same beautiful mom and pop story that you hear all the time, and it was perfectly teed up for us. And they had rents averaging about $900 at the time, which is super low. But he was only projecting them to get to like $1,200, and I knew that they'd get to at least $1,350, right? So immediately, I was like, boom, okay. Everybody we're competing with, unless they know, unless there's a couple people just like me who are like, wait a minute, that's too low. I knew that we'd have a competitive advantage on that thing, right? If I'm looking at the same deal as you, but you think that your rents are going to be $150 below mine on average, that means that I should be able to, if all else being equal, I should be able to pay more for that property, right? And that's exactly what happened. We got that, and little did we know, maybe we knew, but we weren't banking on it, that 1350 ended up being way low too. I mean, we've gotten up above 1550 over at that property, and we've owned it for 15 months now. So, obviously you want to be in areas, and this is exactly why I packed my bags and came down here. Whereas you're going to get some tailwinds from the location that you buy in too. That's exactly what's happened for us. But even so, even if that market growth didn't happen, we'd still be crushing it just based on our original projections in this deal, knowing what we could take it to that day.
Yeah, and people always talk about conservative underwriting. We can honestly say that's what happened here. And we did get a bit of help. We picked this location for a reason. The same reason why a bunch of other thousands and thousands of other people are coming to live in this Tampa area. So what goes along with that type of demographic, especially in this strong rent growth environment nationwide, we underwrote, or you underwrote those rents a bit conservative, but the market certainly helped push us along over the last year and a half. So that's been a beautiful thing. And what I found interesting when I went down to visit these properties, and I knew exactly what you were describing when we were having conversations, is you looked at Sawgrass, and now we're looking at what was called the Carrollwood Apartments. And there's literally a 3 or 4 block area, and there's these small apartment complexes that are so similar. And
Yeah.
what I was able to gather after we got into this deal was other operators have made a few purchases in this Pinellas Park 6 block area, I guess you can say, and they've already began starting that proof of concept for us.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So you always those 3 words, proof of concept, right? That's kind of my buying criteria right there. I'm always looking for the old or boring looking property in that good neighborhood, in that neighborhood where transactions are happening, right? So sometimes, obviously, in a lot of brokered marketed deals, right, they'll bring you the OM, they'll show you the rent roll, and it's like all these rents are constrained except these 2 that the owners just bumped up, and boom, there's proof of concept, right? Some properties don't have that, right? Some properties just have everything constrained. And it's the people who are savvy, it's the people that have their finger on the pulse of their own market who are going to say, okay, they're not going to write off that property, right? They're not going to say, how am I going to get rents up over there? Their highest rent is only $50 above their average. Okay, you got to know what's around it. Okay, there's opportunity everywhere, and sometimes it's smacking you in the face and you're not looking at it. And that was our opportunity.
Yeah, and when you were looking at Sawgrass and you saw what that went for and the other activity in that neighborhood, now Carrollwood comes up. You see that they're priced it a certain way, and they're projecting the rents at a way lesser value than that you knew that you'd be able to hit. So no, they weren't giving this property away by any means. It was still being sold at what, probably a sub 5 cap rate. But as I do
Yeah.
in New York, and as what you're doing in Florida, yeah, that's fine. We'll buy at that 4.5, 5 cap. But what do we need to see, as you described, that business model, that value add? We'll do some work, pretty these buildings up a bit, pretty up the apartments, the exteriors, but we're looking at that massive rent growth.
Yep, exactly. And what's our cap rate at now, right? I mean, we're in double digit cap, no
What is it?
doubt.
What is it at? I'm guessing probably it's going to be 8, 9% at this point.
Above, I think we're above 10.5 at this point right now, which is pretty darn good. You know, and you and I.
Absolutely unheard of. Here we are here we are in the Tampa area, and we bought 14, 15 months ago, and we can say based on what we bought for, we're operating on close to a double-digit cap rate. Are you kidding me?
Yep, exactly right.
So how did you connect the dots here real quick, and then I'll move along. We'll get into some other components of how we operate these types of deals. You looked at Sawgrass, you lost that deal, and now we're looking at Carrollwood. What's our major concern when we're looking to get that under contract? That someone else who had been looking at these other complexes, who may have been a successful purchaser on these other ones, now you might have to compete with them as they continue to try to create their economies of scale in this neighborhood.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that was definitely on my mind for sure. And that's what everybody kind of, especially people who are going into, not only people that are going into their first acquisition, people that are going into their second, their third, their fourth, their fifth. I mean, it's it's very rare that you close on a property and you don't still have nerves as far as, am I over am I overpaying here? Like, am I going to be able to hit these projections? This, that, right? We're looking at, our property is very similar, right? Sawgrass is, and just so everybody understands, Bill is not joking when he says it's 3 lots down. I mean, I could probably run there. Bill could probably beat me there, but in 25 seconds, maybe less. Um, okay, so that's a direct comp, right? Sawgrass, the units are a little bit bigger. Okay, are we going to be able to do a little bit aesthetically that's going to close the gap there? And I think at the end of the day, I think we knew that we were being conservative, but you never eliminate that doubt completely, right? So yeah, that's another thing, right? Is we're saying, okay, how are we going to be able to get this over the guys that just bought here down the street? And the beautiful part is so I think that Sawgrass deal sold for maybe 125 a door, and we bought for 129. And so you have a little bit of that too. Don't discount when you are looking at buying in a neighborhood where, other syndicators, other multifamily buyers operate. Sometimes a guy that bought 6 months ago or 5.5 months ago for a little bit lower per door, sometimes his ego gets in the way, right? And he says, no, I bought this other one. It might even be a slightly nicer property. I bought that one for cheaper. I'm not going to pay higher for this one. Who am I? What am I, a sucker? Right? So you always have that as well. And I feel the same way. I mean, Bill, talk about comps, talk about positive indicators. You know that this one was 2 blocks down, but it sold within 6 months of us buying Park Place for 129 a door. That sold for 211 a door, right? And even today, I still think that was a little high of a purchase by that guy. But it's like we would have never bought for 211 a door, and maybe if that number was lower, maybe if he bought for 160, maybe he would have had a deal, right? And maybe we'd be looking at it now and saying, we didn't want to pay 30 grand a door more, but times have changed. When we bought for 129, Raven at Park Place didn't exist. Raven at Park Place wasn't pushing $1,600 rents. right? So that brings up that whole neighborhood too. So that was, it's a disadvantage and an advantage in one, and it's all how it shakes out. So you just got to go for it.
No, and I love how you said that when you don't know until you actually start operating your own deal. We had proof of concept from other operators doing their reposition. Same type of template. We're all no, we're not all doing the same thing, but this neighborhood, it's fair to say 5, 10, 15 years ago was not as high quality of a neighborhood it is now. It's gentrified. And then over the last, 3 or 4 years, operators have come in as this area of Pinellas County grew and started becoming more desirable. It had that commercial aspect to it. And operators started doing this value add rent growth concept, having some success. We buy Carrollwood, you rebrand that to Raven at Park Place. Now, we don't know for sure. That's the fun of this. That's when you get the butterflies. Now we have to perform. And me and you are talking on the phone where you're saying, all right, I've called these other complexes. I think they're catching on to me. They know I'm not a renter. I'm always asking them their rental prices and their occupancy. Next thing you know, I'm in New York now acting like a tenant prospect. I'm calling the neighborhood complexes, seeing if I can get intel. But we were just beating a dead horse at that point because it was just a matter of time, 4 weeks in after we bought that place, that it was immediate. It was immediate where they were renting. Well, we started conservative. We rented the first new turn at what, 1250, 1300 bucks.
Yeah, I think at the time we weren't necessarily feeling like we were being conservative, right? We pushed it up. I think we pushed it up to 1300. That's right. I think we wrote it in at I think we wrote it in at 1300, and we went for it, right? And we got it immediately. So that one was beautiful, right? There wasn't a long period of time where we were like, okay, are we gonna, did we miss this? Are we gonna be able to get this? I mean, we got it immediately. And then as that market was growing, we were just trying to catch it. We didn't really know what our ceiling was for quite a while, right? We just, every new turn we did, we bumped it up a little, we bumped it up a little bit, we bumped it up a little bit until we hit it probably around 1550, 1575 is where we're really kind of, probably running into our capacity as far as if we're going to go higher than that, we got to put a lot of work into it where, our ROI on projects will go down substantially. Not to say that we won't do that at some point, and not to say that the market won't increase at some point too, where we're able to just push it there. I expect that it will. This is a good area that people are still flooding into. But you're right. That was it was good feedback pretty quickly for us that we were going to be making money on that deal.
Yeah, we got a couple fresh rentals at that amount, and the one thing that really proved it to me, we sent out some renewals that were fairly aggressive, and I believe you sent out 8, and we got 8 out of 8 renewals back, which is unheard of. At that point, I think it was clear. All right, let's step on the gas a bit here, and the next 4, 6, 8 months went absolutely seamlessly, where 8, 9 months in, we're talking about several $1 million of force value.
Yeah. Yep, no doubt. And that's, probably been the most beautiful part of owning it lately, right? Is some of this good news, these distributions that we've been making. Obviously, you and I projected it to our investors. It's a pretty typical value add deal, right? We're going to be forcing a lot of value in year one. We're going to be putting a lot of work into the property, spending good money. And we started figuring out, right, that these residents wanted to stay. They couldn't find a place in the neighborhood, right, that they could get cheaper rent. So quickly, we spent way less money to get way more income than we projected, which is always a good thing, right? And we told our investors, not to expect distributions in year one. And what did we do just now? We just completed year one of distributions at 9% on their money. So talk about beating projections. It's been a good year, and we're primed. We've got a great cash position, and our margins are excellent. We're primed to blow that 9% out of the water moving forward.
No, absolutely. And I love these deals because what's that sweet spot on renewals and new terms? Because we don't want everybody to just take off. So there is a bit of finesse with this process, and we hit it just right. And we didn't have much more than 2 or 3 apartments becoming vacant at any point in time. So we were able to go through this value add process from apartment to apartment and get them turned over and leased as we were getting a super high retention rate. So we really hadn't missed a beat at the 44 unit, which is Raven at Park Place. Going back, I met you when you were already underwriting deals, looking at deals, and I got used to a certain underwriting spreadsheet that I had become accustomed to, and then I started seeing yours, and to find out you built that underwriting spreadsheet, which I was impressed with. At what point did you build that? Were you using a different spreadsheet underwriting deals, and what motivated you to spend the time on your own spreadsheet?
Yeah, I think it was 2 things, right? One, it was kind of ignorance. As I was getting into the business, I was, learning. I followed much the same path as many people that get into multifamily. I stumbled across some YouTube video that brought up my father's a mailman. My mom's an independent provider, physical therapist. There's no real estate in my family, right? But I stumbled across some pairing of words like, earn passive income through multifamily investing. And I was like, what is that? I don't know what that is, but that sounds really good. Then, kind of went down the rabbit hole. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Bigger Pockets, Grant Cardone, all this type of stuff, right? And I was just learning as I went. And so I didn't have access to some of these kind of very sophisticated guys. And so while I was still working in New York City, taking that 1-hour train to and from work every day, I was just building that spreadsheet out. And by the time you saw that spreadsheet for the first time, and it's very different from when you originally saw it back in 2021, but boy, was it different than it was when I started creating that thing probably in 2018. It wouldn't have been impressive at that time, that's for sure. And it's quite a bit more in depth and I think more accurate now. But I don't think that's a requirement by any means for anybody getting into this business. But that was, to be dead honest, that was something that really helped me learn this thing. And to really understand kind of, and I was able to tailor that right to the exact type of property that I wanted to be buying. I knew I wanted to be buying value add home run deals, something that we could be forcing a ton of valuation, ideally refinance quickly if the market provides for it. But even if we didn't refinance quickly, we were going to be forcing so much NOI on these things that our profit margins were going to be incredible. So I tailored my spreadsheet to fit that exact model that I wanted to buy for myself and offer to investors, to join part in.
No, absolutely. And just like you started it in 2018, you're just learning as you go. But it's seriously great practice. When I was 21, 22, 23, I wasn't looking at large multifamily stuff. I'm looking at 2 families. So I'm doing a simple cash flow analysis, but still at that level, I was just doing an analysis on anything and everything I could get my hands on just to get the reps in, get that practice, because that's what it takes when you're first starting off. Don't expect to just jump in and be an expert at even a simple cash flow analysis, let alone you're underwriting 40, 50, 100 unit deals. So I've seen that constant, never-ending improvement with that spreadsheet. Pivoting away into something it's all just as valuable. All these different components that make this stuff happen. As you're down, boots on the ground in the Tampa area, we have to develop relationships. So I know that we've been working with a particular property management company. We've utilized a bank. I know we interviewed probably 5 or 6 banks, but we had our eyes on one that we ended up with. They gave us the best deal. They seem to be very easy to work with. And also brokers. I spoke with a broker yesterday. I hadn't mentioned this to you today, who called me out of the blue. And one thing leads to another. And yeah, of course he knows Alex Corpolongo. He knew exactly what asset you got involved in. And those discussions are fun. So tell us about how important, when you realized how important it was to make sure that you had these relationships established before you really got traction buying that first property.
Yeah, I mean, and gosh, it's so important. I mean, that is taking the conversation kind of to in a new direction, but it hits that same last thing that we were just talking about, right? If you're going to buy these things, right, and we're talking about reps, people get lost. You hear this analysis paralysis thing, right, where people are underwriting thousands of deals, they never buy a deal. That can happen. That can happen very easily. And if you don't have, you're not building specific knowledge, either yourself, adding the tools to your toolkit, you could do that, and you could grow very quickly that way, but you could grow even faster if you're not only adding tools to your own personal toolkit, but also adding the people that already have the tools that you can collaborate with and get things done quicker. So that was kind of, it's very important to hit both, right? Skill yourself up, but also skill up your team that you're going to be working with, right? And who does that involve? Then, just like you mentioned, property managers, bakers, partners, contractors, inspectors, attorneys, accountants. It's all these people that you're going to be doing business with on a day-to-day basis. Maybe not day-to-day, even monthly basis, but these are the people that you need to know that you should be talking to even before you have that first deal. And that paid huge dividends for us, and kind of made our operations pretty seamless as well.
How did that look? You're what are you, 27, 28, 29? How old are you?
I just turned 28 last week.
28, you just came from New York, you land in Tampa, you decide that you're going to buy large multifamily, you have to develop these relationships. Did you have a learning curve or any type of challenges, people taking you seriously?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I bought my first deal at a young age, but that doesn't mean that it was fast happening at all, right? I mean, I just talked about I'm building out that underwriting model when I was, 22, 23, riding that train in New York City. Talk about not being taken seriously. You want to be taken seriously when you're living in New York. You've chosen Tampa as your market, and you're calling brokers and you're saying, "Oh yeah, I'm looking at this deal. I'm up in New York City," and you have no connections to Tampa. You own nothing down there, and it's like these people are like, why am I wasting time with you, right? And then I start flying down on weekends, right, to make horrendous offers. Horrendous offers. Like I said, finger not on the pulse of these markets. I don't know what the neighbors are doing. I really don't know what the comps should be at these, and I'm just trying to figure it out, right? And brokers could smell that from a mile away. I worked with a lot of people who did kind of work with me, give me the benefit of the doubt, and these are actually people that I'm doing business with all the time. You'd be surprised how many times I see these guys now, Bill, and they bring up, seeing me 5-6 years ago, when I was making these flights down on the weekends. And it's just cool because I saw a lot of them when they were coming up too. They were, starting off, associates in some of these firms, and now they're doing very well for themselves. So, everybody kind of looks, it's very hard to have credibility right when you're starting out, but just get started. You'll build credibility quickly. Don't be scared, even if you are scared. March right into that fear, and be who you want to be.
Be who you want to be. I love that because you're coming down from New York City, and what are you doing? Just throwing, you said horrendous offers. You just lowballing?
Yeah, I wasn't intentionally lowballing though. That's kind of the thing, right? We talk about people who get into what's called analysis paralysis. Um, they'll underwrite 1,000 different offers using the same criteria as they did the first one. Guess what? That you hear these things: race to 80, race to 100, whatever it is. Okay, you don't hit it on 80, you don't hit it on 100 if you're not adding ways where you're going to force more NOI, right? Over that time, I realized, okay, originally I was writing up, I was going to have this property manager who would have been super expensive. Now I've got this great property manager who's going to be cheaper and going to be able to get me more income, right? That's going to up my purchase price. I'm now a commercial certified general contractor, right? I can handle a lot of this construction management where other people can't. That's going to up my purchase price. Kind of all these things, I'm adding these tools and these people into the equation that's going to listen. It does. It's not that you are making accepting a worse deal. It's that you are making it a better deal and you're able to buy at a higher price than you would have when you knew nothing 80, 100 units before that you analyze, right? So that's very, very important. If you're getting started, don't think that you're going to make it happen by being patient. Listen, I'm not saying that a beautiful deal doesn't slip through the cracks, right? And you're able to do it without leveling up your skills. But if you want to get there faster, add the right people to your team and become a little bit more dangerous in the field, whatever that may be.
And as you're learning and you're running around, maybe in the beginning, feeling your way around, throwing out some what you said horrendous offers or lowball offers, but you're doing it in a way where you're still keeping rapport with brokers and anybody that you're dealing with. So now you guys can look back and giggle, knowing that that's where you were in your journey. And now you're in a whole different place, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So getting into the operations of the 44 unit and the 20 unit that we purchased for that matter, you're the asset manager. We have a fantastic property manager that's on the front line. When I say front line, we're doing a value add high rent growth deal. A lot of tenants who have been comfortable for a long period of time in these apartment complexes are getting renewals that they're not crazy about. Talk about the week-to-week type conversations you have to have with the property managers as far as being so aggressive on these deals.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to find that sweet spot, right? And while the nature of the deal, these value add deals are very similar, and in some ways the 44 unit looks a lot like the 20 unit. In other ways, it doesn't, right? The 20 unit was that was a 30-year owner. His father had bought the property before him. Talk about constrained rents. It's almost like you can't find the way that guy was operating the property. I mean, we're talking about 2-bedroom units at renting for $600 in a good location too. Not far from the Gulf beaches. Very, very desirable place to be. A lot of employment around hospitals, big retailers, businesses. So anyway, so that one was a little bit different, but you got to find that sweet spot, right? We've had a little bit more turnover there, certainly, just because where we should be on rents is so different from where they were when we took it over, right? So we worked with some people. We're still working with some people to make it work. You're not trying to make things so painful for your tenant base, right? These are people that you want to continue living there if you could make that happen, right? But sometimes it's more painful than others. So yeah, our property manager is they run a great operation. They've got tough and experienced people over there. and they make it work, right? Sometimes, something that makes a slightly more painful situation for somebody palatable is just talking to the right person about it. And I think that we have the right people at that property management company. I'm very grateful to have just stumbled upon them, and it was just happenstance, right? And some of the best relationships that you have in business and personally are just ones that just came together through serendipity. So that was that one, and they've done an incredible job for us.
No doubt. And yeah, the relationship. So some are easier to form than others. Like, how many top property managers did you talk to before you found them?
All of them. All of them. I mean, how many companies? 15, 20? I mean, there's not a company in the Tampa Bay that I've not spoken to as far as property management goes. And there's good ones. There's other good ones as well, no doubt about it. But they just struck me. I immediately, connected with the woman who runs the show and met some of her team very quickly, and they were kind of willing to commit to us too, investing in us, believing in what we were going to be doing in Pinellas County, and it's worked out, very, very well for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I'm doing these types of deals in New York also, and the way I like to do it when we're approaching these aggressive lease renewals, we have a script. So when anybody, 'cause it's inevitable, you're going to get some of these tenants that call in and say, I've been here 10 years. You just put my rent from 1,100 to 1,400, and it's a discussion. So we always had a script, so we're consistent with every tenant that's going to call in to explain that, we haven't owned the property 30 years. We had to buy it at market value. But we're going to be making improvements on the outside. We're going to be providing a much nicer community to live in. Is there anything that we can do for you in your unit? We do appreciate your tenancy. And to really have a script that's set to make that tenant comfortable.
Yeah. And I'd say the other thing that makes it tenable too is that, we buy these, we're never taking it to the point where we're the most expensive game in town, right? We're always buying every single property I've bought thus far has been after another transaction in the relative area, right? So we are always drafting behind another property that's pushing harder, pushing higher than we are, right? So I think, residents who, even if their rent is going up, right? If you're making the property beautiful, one, that usually allows them to kind of swallow that. And then B, if they see the other neighbors going up even higher, they're usually pretty grateful, right? That you're not gouging them. So that's our game. That's the game we like to play. Not only does it make it a good place for residents to stay where they don't have to up and leave, but B, our dollars go further, right? In renovations, our dollars go further if we're just drafting behind the guy that spent more for his property than we spent, and he has to push rents higher to hit the same returns that we're going to hit, right? So those are kind of some of the tailwinds that we have working for us at our deals.
No doubt. Last question here on the chemistry between you as the asset manager and the property manager. You having, well, you just got your general contractor certification in Florida. You were a project manager of a high-rise hotel. So you have that expertise. What's that chemistry where the property manager has their contractors doing the remodel? And I know that you're fairly involved. You certainly know what's going on at these properties and remodel to remodel. How involved do you get so you're not stepping on toes or overlapping too much based on you having your expertise, but allowing them room to do their work?
Sure. Yeah, and it's an ebb and flow, right? I mean, this is kind, if you're going to be doing business with people, you want to be able to delegate things. You want to be able to give people rope, right? You want to be able to let them succeed and to be master their fate, right? So there's times when I'm able to kind of pull back a little bit and just let them go. And if things are just churning, you let them keep doing it, right? And there's things that I'm involved in. Okay, what general upgrade projects are we going to be going? I'm driving that process all the time, right? But as far as how we're turning the units, what rental prices are we pushing, kind of some of these more granular things that happen day to day, it's best to step back, right? They take more ownership in what they're doing, right? And that they feel like they have equity in these decisions, and they do. And that's the way it should be. You want somebody who has that, call it founder's mentality, right? Where they own the decisions that they're making. That's very, very important. And it's important for you too. You don't want to be involved in every single minute decision that happens, right? If you're trying to scale a business, I mean, Bill, this is I'm speaking your language right now, as far as you being in property management for 20 years, and you being able to build some of these relationships that really are exactly kind of what you're looking for in the direction that you want to take your business, right? It's no different than the way I'm working with these property managers. Sometimes they do, sometimes there's slip ups, sometimes, and I'll do at least a weekly call with them every single week. Sometimes they slip up. I'm very kind of diligent with these things. If they slip up, they know that I know that they slipped up, right? And I don't kind of whip them too hard, but you're you got to just make sure that they know you're there, you're watching them, and if they're doing a great job, you let them go with it. If not, you got to keep them in line. It's just an ebb and flow.
No, and that's the partnership. This is business, and you have to keep this thing rolling seamlessly, but also giving them, like you said, the rope. You certainly don't want to micromanage the process too much. Otherwise, I don't think that the property manager or those contractors are going to want to have that long relationship, just because it gets a bit uncomfortable, where I don't think anybody really wants to be micromanaged.
Sure. 100%.
So what else is going down in the Pinellas County area? We did the 44 unit in Pinellas Park. You have 15 minutes across town entering St. Petersburg. We have Reagan at Bay Pine, which we are 6 months into that deal. The timing of that deal was interesting because we got into that in August. Had some apartments that had to be remodeled, but eventually, once we pick up a little bit of momentum, next thing you know, we're hitting the holiday season. And it doesn't matter where you are in the country, you have that month and a half period of time where things just slow down.
Sure. Yeah, it's and I wouldn't say that, obviously that first deal was easier than we kind of planned for. But I wouldn't. And no deal is easy, right? Everything you hit new obstacles that you didn't foresee. You prepare as much as possible to operate seamlessly as you can. But obviously that 20 unit one, that was just timing wise, it was just a little bit funky, right? And we kind of moved at a quicker pace there. And we had a little bit more of a bumpy path to get to where we're getting to today with the occupancy that we're getting. And guess what? I mean, I think we're at a point in that deal where we're going to be operating as profitably or more profitably than the 44 unit. Now, I mean, we're only 7 months in, right? And where are we right now? I mean, we're very close to like a full reposition on that deal 7 months in. It's kind of beautiful. Yeah. Did we kind of go through patches where our occupancy was lower than we thought that it might be? Sure. But we moved quickly, and we followed the business plan, and it's paying off for us there as well.
No, it's funny because all it takes is that little bit of momentum to kick in again, where you have more vacancy than you want, but then you rent 2 or 3 apartments. Next thing you know, we're staring at each other saying, all right, well, we had 11 or 12 out of the 20 apartments weren't over, but we've just got up into 7 or 8 occupied apartments where we just took those rents from $850 up to 1,500. So it goes from Christmas time when no one's thinking about moving to now mid-January where our proof of contact is extremely established. We know that we're going to be getting 15 to 1,600 off these vacant apartments. You're getting some renewals, you're getting some move outs, but now it's just business as usual. Fair to say that by April, May, we're gonna be pretty caught up on filling any vacant apartments.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're pushing 90% occupancy right now. So was it a little bit choppier? Sure. Is it any worse? No. Is it a little bit better? Possibly. I mean, we'll see by the time that 12 months rolls around. The distributions that we're dishing out on that one, I think people are going to be very, very happy about that deal as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like that deal is going to start distributing right around when the 44 or even at Parkway started.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. So Alex sent over to me the year end for 2022 on the 44 Raven at Parkways, and I love what I was seeing. At that point, I contacted him and said, "Hey, we got to talk about these properties on the podcast because this is what it's all about. This is the exciting part of the business. We found these properties and went through that a bit of anxiety which comes along with creating that proof of concept, and then going through 6 to 9 months of the hard work, vacant apartments, spending money, improving apartments, renting them one by one. But when that year end kicks in on a 44 unit where we've been able to turn probably half of those apartments and then have a great tenant retention, time to celebrate. Here we are.
Yeah, it's definitely feeling that way right now. So I think it's you and I both know it's going to be a very, very enjoyable, very, very profitable property to own. And yeah, there's more like it. It's a funky time in the market right now. It's like it's not COVID level, but there's certainly deal transaction volume has slowed. But there is opportunity everywhere. You just got to find it. You got to add the tools to your toolkit. You got to add the people to your group that's going to facilitate you finding these deals. And I expect you and I to be doing another one very, very soon. There's some coals in the fire right now. So we're going to have some very exciting conversations coming up in the next couple weeks.
Ooh, I haven't heard that in a while. Coals in the fire. That means it's let's get the dry powder rolling. Because when you said that in the past, it's less than 45 days that something is doing.
You said it, not me.
Yeah, it's an interesting part in the market. It's an interesting time in this market cycle. It seems like everyone's at pause because of the interest rates and sellers not aligning with buyers with sales prices and such. But these deals, the value, it doesn't matter that the rates went way up. Yes, did that make our property a little less valuable because if a buyer came along, hypothetically speaking, if we were selling, they wouldn't be able to pay as much. But we're talking 10% dip maximum. And at this point, we're just looking to continuing to build that rent growth. And then if we do get a lucky dip in rate, we might be able to get that refund.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're ready for it right now, right? I mean, what we've done to the NOI over there, we've multiplied that thing. So now, guess what? What's the perk of getting fixed rate, beautiful long-term debt with no prepayment penalty? Is you just get to wait, operate as you would, increase NOI as much as you can, kind of look at it every single day. Hey, what can I do to juice NOI here? What can I do to operate here a little bit more efficiently? We do that, and then we wait for the market to comply. And as soon as it's right for it, we strike. We make big moves that are going to pay massive dividends for ourselves and our investors, and we keep operating, right?
Yeah, and if the refi doesn't take shape, there's going to be a very, very rich distribution property, and those returns will be the same. And going forward, the next deal that comes along, your boots on the ground, you know what the rents are going to be. We're just buying at a higher interest rate, but we're underwriting at that higher interest rate. And also projecting if we do want to refi, we're going to cautiously predict that refi interest rate as cautiously as possible so we set our investors up for success.
Exactly. And we're not, obviously, you just touched on it. We're not underwriting that we're going to be refining with some super low interest rate. But guess what? You buy at a higher interest rate, that probably does facilitate, probably juicier interest rates in the future that you can be refining into. So you take the good with the bad, right? Obviously, we bought these deals at the lowest interest rates in history, right? I mean, we got a 3.5% rate on that 44 unit, which is absolutely beautiful. But who knows if those times are coming back? It doesn't matter. We're not writing up deals as if they're going to be coming back. We buy good deals, whether the market is awesome at the time or not. And I guarantee, before we sell these deals or when we're selling these deals, the market's going to be perfect for it. So that's what matters.
And I feel like I'm saying this way too much now, but 95% of my investing career, interest rates were between 5.5% and 7%. We made a career with interest rates at that level. So, real estate is a great investment, no matter how you price it, no matter what the interest rate is. We're underwriting according to the rate at this particular time. Alex, I appreciate you being on. It went a little bit long, but I warned you. I knew that as I was preparing for this, that time flies because we had a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have, right? Time flies when we're talking, Bill. So I appreciate you having me on.
No doubt.
Yeah, so good to speak with you as always.
Absolutely. This is Alex Corpolongo from the Tampa area. He's always looking for that next great deal, and we will keep you informed when that happens.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Alex.